Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the daily reflections, Quranic reflections with Dr. Aslam. My name is Muhammad Abdul Aleem. On behalf of Islamicity, I welcome all of you. Today is the 13th juz that we will be covering. I hope all of you are finding this beneficial. We are honored to have Dr. Aslam Abdullah share his reflections and his views about the different verses with us. And that does not preclude us from studying on our own also, I should say. So I am surely taking advantage of this and making sure that we can follow with Dr. Aslam and make sure that we are reading up as we go along. So with that, I welcome Dr. Aslam. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره أحمده وأصلي على رسوله الكريم. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It is the 13th juz, 13th night, and our focus tonight are verses from Surah Yusuf, the entire chapter of Surah Ra'd, and Surah Ibrahim, part of that surah. Every juz of the Quran, every surah of the Quran revolves around one basic theme, and that is the guidance of God is the guidance that matters. Inna hudallahi huwal huda. And through different means and through different stories and through different events and through different anecdotes, the Quran tries to explain how we can get the guidance, what is the impact of that guidance on our everyday life, and how should we look at the guidance, even though the guidance was presented 1400 years ago and much before 5,000 years ago or 8,000 or 10, whenever the human beings were first given the divine guidance. So in these three surahs, the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is mentioned. The story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam is mentioned. And Surah Ra'd specifically focused on the creation and how human beings should deal with the creation, should connect with the creation. With Surah, with the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, it continues from where we left yesterday, that he was in prison, and from prison he then got elevated to a position of influence and became one of the influential minister in Egyptian court. And then he was running the agriculture or food or finance ministry, whatever you want to call it. And he really turned things around and changed a famine and drought situation into a situation of prosperity for the people. So much so that the people from different other countries came to get the help from that, and that again gives us an idea that the we are living in a global village. We cannot isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, and we cannot simply say that we will focus only on our issues and others, if they need our help, would not be given help or would not be given the priority. In the story of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, we say that whosoever deserves help and whosoever needs help must be given help. So the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, who had abandoned him, came back to Egypt seeking his help without knowing that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, their brother, was the one who was in charge of affairs. And the story unfolds in different ways, and you can look at that particular story. But ultimately, what happens is that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was recognized by his brothers, and the father Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam learned about it, and they all came together. But what is significant is that when they came together, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam made the statement that it is not a day of revenge, it's a day to seek the forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and giving us one more lesson that when we overcome the difficulties, when we overcome the enemies, we should not retaliate in revenge and we should not hurt them. This is what the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also was, that when he entered Mecca, he again recited the same kind verse, La tasribal yawm, today there is no revenge against anyone. The story unfolds, and Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam honors his parents, and the brothers are forgiven. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He is in knowledge of everything, and everything in the universe submits to Him. Submit means submits to His law. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word that everything is in state of sajda or in a state of tasbih, it means that they are following the laws and the rules that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them to follow. So when He says that the moon and the stars are prostrating, when it says that the earth is prostrating, it means that they are following the laws and following the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it also describes, and I'll go in detail about that, the characteristics of the believers and the non-believers. It also says that the comfort, that it is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that gives the comfort. It also says that if we are grateful, if we recognize the blessings that God has given us, and if we accept the blessings with humility, then He increases those blessings upon each one of us. And then He also tells us that the prophets and his followers were ridiculed, were threatened, often were killed by the people, yet the truth continues, and ultimately the good words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala succeeded. And then it also says that the purpose of the Quran is primarily to enable people to use their intellect and use their mind to see the creation and to see the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it also says that the the shaitan often tries to whisper in the minds of people, yet it is their determination that would keep them away from that. And it also warns against the attitude of ungratefulness to God Almighty. And then finally, it focuses on the prayer of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam when he left his infant and his wife in Mecca. And I will focus on that particular verse in detail because, in my understanding of the Quran, that is a amazingly revolutionary verse and revolutionary prayer. And I have not yet understood why such an important prayer has not been given the rightful place in the Muslim intellectual thoughts and Muslim intellectual understanding, and I'll come to that in a moment. So this is an overview of this particular chapter or part. Let's focus on 5 or 6 verses specifically. One is verse 53 of Surah Yusuf. It talks about in the nafs al-ammara, that each one of us has 3 stages of our own self or soul. One that instigates us to do things that are irrational, that might be hurtful to others as well as to ourselves, that might be defined as deviation from the right path, or they might be defined as evil. The other one is that where we are not in a position to make a decision whether what we are doing is right or what we are doing is right, and often we are in a state of perplexity. And the third one is where we have a contentful and a very satisfied and comforted heart that is settled about certain things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that each one of us has that self or self-understanding, and nafs al-ammara is the one that basically, that phase of our soul self often forces us to do those kind of things, but we must understand that if we come under the protection of Allah's guidance and Allah's rules, then we can defeat that nafs ammara, we can defeat that evil soul or evil self. We also go to the next verse, that is 13:11, or yes, which is in Surah Ra'd, and which says, "In Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim." And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again says that He does not change the condition of the people unless they are willing to change for themselves. And that brings us to a very interesting question. We all wait for the Messiah or Isa alayhi salatu wasalam to return. And we say that change would not happen until he comes back. Goodness would not prevail unless he returns. We make all those kind of assumptions, and we have been doing it for centuries. But this particular verse of the Quran is saying that the change isn't within your grasp. You have to bring about changes. And unless you are convinced about the change and you are convinced, you have the conviction about the ways the change has to be brought, change will not take place. So what is the change that we want? We want a change where not only we as Muslims, but every human being lives in a dignified status in this world. We want change to ensure that the resources of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not exploited, and every human being is given an opportunity to make use of those resources. We want a change that ensures that certain people do not use the resources that God has given to them to exploit others on the basis of gender, on the basis of ethnicity, on the basis of culture, on the basis of status. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, that you have to work for those kind of changes. And we are asked to pray, to fast, to give zakat, to do hajj, primarily for this purpose, to empower us with the inspiration to change our living conditions. But what has happened is that we have turned these instruments of change and that catalyst for change into a self-serving institutions without realizing that their purpose was to prepare us for something bigger that we often ignore and that we often fail to recognize. Let me bring up to you the characteristics that the Quran mentions, even though you would not find the verses on the screen, but those verses can be found in chapter 13, verse from 20 to 23. And it says that the believers, their characteristic is that they fulfill their pledges, that they fulfill the covenant that they have made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each one of us has made a covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that covenant is that we follow his guidance, that we do not follow our own desires, that we do not follow the desires of other people, we follow his guidance, that we maintain the relationship that God has created, that we keep on reminding ourselves that he is the authority and we should show respect and we should be concerned about disobeying him. And then he is the one who will hold us accountable, and we should be worried about the sense of accountability. And then we should have the patience and perseverance to the conditions that often befell upon us. And then we are constant in our prayers, and and then we spend whatever resources Allah has given us openly and secretly. And then once we do this kind of thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ensure that our good deeds erase all the bad deeds, and he indeed is the one who is the most powerful and the most forgiving of all. And those people who are not believers, they break their pledges. They are exploitative. They break the covenant that they have made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by following their own desires. They are not afraid of the day of accountability by doing things whatever they want to do, and they are not very constant in their prayers and their commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they do not use their resources for the betterment of humanity. So these are the characteristics of those who are non-believers. So obviously, it is not only about saying that we are the believers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's our actions that will determine our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we go to the verse 28 of chapter Rad 13, which says that Allah bi zikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. That only the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only the zikr of Allah, only the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be a source of satisfaction, internal satisfaction for all of us. And that is very important for us. Because if we are internally satisfied, if we internally feel comfortable about the ideas and the guidance that we believe in, then the tensions and the kind of contradictions and the kind of dichotomy that we often face in our life would be handled with. That we will have a point of reference to go back. Whenever we are in doubt, whenever we have questions, whenever we have you call tensions or anxiety, we go back to the guidance of God Almighty and ask Him, how should we handle this kind of stuff? And the answers come. Because the guidance gives us that answer. It opens our heart and our minds in that sense. And then He also says that لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ, that if you would recognize what I have given you, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, then I will increase my bounties upon you. In other words, when we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by making us realize that we are not the one who produced it, we are not the one who created it, it is He who has given us, and then so He would definitely recognize this. Let's go to the verse 19 of chapter 14. I brought this one, even though it is very simple words. Alam tara anna Allah khalaqa as-samawati wal arda bil haqq. Yasha yuzhibukum wa ya'ti bi khalqin jadid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and earth bil haqq. Now, what is this haqq? Haqq, in many instances in the Quran, is used to define laws and to define universal rules. So what he's saying, that everything that exists in this universe, in the heavens and on the earth, in the space and on the ground, in other planets, everywhere, is based on laws. Is based on certain universal principles. And if we fail to recognize them, if we fail to understand those laws, then it is not beyond His power to replace us. He would bring some new khalq. So it also tells us that we may not be the last thinking people who are blessed with the presence in this universe, with the existence in this universe. It is quite possible that if we do not follow the guidance that has been given to us, it is quite possible that if we do not live the way we are supposed to live in terms of developing those kind of understanding of God that enables the dignity to each and every human being, then the one who created this universe on the basis of law is capable of creating an alternative to us and for us and of us. And that is something that the Quran is mind-boggling, this particular verse, that human beings think that they would be the only, and they have been the only creation that has been given the power of intellect thing. If we do not use that power of intellect properly, then the whole humanity can face a situation where others can replace that that uh, species, and we need to think about it in the context of what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is saying. Let's go to the last verse, and that is 14:32, 37, 14:37. Now, this refers to a very interesting incident in our history, in the history of humanity, when a prophet, the most responsible person who has been blessed with the divine guidance, divine message, is being asked by none other than God to leave his young wife and his infant child without any resources in a far off land where there was nothing but desert. And and it looks very strange. Why would that act of irresponsibility be done when the emphasis of the Quran is to take care of one's family? When the responsibility of the father is to ensure that they should be the role model for their children, and they should be the one, the providers, and they should be the one who should be in leadership position. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala probably wanted to tell us something that we have not yet fully grasped, and I want you to pay attention to what is being said. When he left his wife and children, he recited this particular verse, this particular dua. رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ عِنْدَ بَيْتِكَ الْمُحَرَّمِ رَبَّنَا لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ فَاجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ وَارْزُقْهُم مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَشْكُرُونَ. 4 specific issues were brought by Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam in this prayer. He's telling Allah, saying Allah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I am leaving part of my progeny in this barren land. He recognizes that this is a barren land. He recognizes it's a desert. It is without any resources. In the Baitik al-Muharram, at a place which will become a inviolable place, a sacred place. So I'm asking, O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, رَبَّنَا لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. Help them or help us establish prayer. فَاجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِ. And inspire people to feel attracted to this place and to these ideas. وَارْزُقْهُم مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ. And give them sustenance. Feed them with the fruit of their labor. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَشْكُرُونَ. And make them grateful to you. 4th thing. First is this theological or spiritual development of the community. لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ. Establish prayers. فَجَعَلَ أَفْئِدَةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ. An outreach program so that other people could understand what is being done and what is being said. وَارْزُقْهُم مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ. Give us the tools and give us the knowledge so that we could cultivate in this desert, and then make this desert a place where we could earn our sustenance. So that we could be grateful by sharing what you have given us. And who were the people who were given that responsibility? 2 people. One was an infant, that is Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, and the other was Hajra alayhi salatu wasalam, the wife, the young wife. So practically, the leadership is being given to Hajra alayhi salatu wasalam to establish prayers, to do an outreach, to invite other people to believe in this, وَارْزُقْهُمْ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ, and to create conditions for economic and financial growth and development, لَعَلُّهُمْ يَشْكُرُونَ, and to be generous and to be kind and to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by sharing those resources. And how do we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was pleased with what was done by Hajra alayhi salatu wasalam? He ensured that each and every step that Hajra alayhi salatu wasalam took in fulfilling that responsibility was turned into a religious institution in the form of Hajj. So he ran before Safa and Marwa looking for water, and it is now part of Hajj. The Zamzam, the well of water, sprang from the feet of Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam at the prayer of Hajra alayhi salatu wasalam and drink. In the Baitik al-Muharram, that place where they were left by Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam became the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such a great honor, and she is the only person who has been honored in the sense that each and every action of hers in fulfilling her responsibilities was institutionalized in the form of Hajj, in the form of the greatest religious practice that takes place in the world. It is she who led the foundation of the community. It is she who built the community. It is she who fulfilled the divine dream in this world. It is she who ensured that the expectations that the Prophet had from her are fulfilled in its full form and full shape. And that is what we have neglected, and that is what we have not focused in our 1400 years history. This is what the Quran is saying. We read the verse without going deep into what is the implication of what is being said here. We often put it in the form that, well, it is the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam gave sacrifice, but the greatest sacrifice was given by the wife. And she did not complain. Rather, she fulfilled those responsibilities. So this is something that we have to understand, that great institutions are built when we recognize that equality of leadership of the women, of the gender that has been what you call ostracized from our own community life. And not only Islam, but in other parts, in other religions as well. And it is this kind of practice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to tear apart by asking his messenger, who was blessed with the son at the old age, to do this sacrifice, to teach humanity that they are equal, that they have the same leadership qualities, that they can turn things around and then they can fulfill the divine dreams. Because in a male dominant society, whether it was in Iraq or it was in any other part of the world, it was impossible. As it is impossible today. That the greatest democracy of the world in this country, in our country, is yet to give that kind of recognition to women in terms of leading the nation. Forget about the faith itself or theology itself. Look at the issues of the genders. That is still today, women earn less than men. It's still today, they are not given that kind of respect and dignity that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. This is the point. This is the revolutionary ideal of the Quran. This is the change that the Quran brought in the thinking, but what happened in the uh, wake of our emphasis on tradition, in the wake of our emphasis on male chauvinistic ideas and male dominant ideas, we have ignored this Quranic verse, which brings back us to the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not discriminate people on the basis of gender and does not make one superior to the others. Here, in the case of the greatest religious institution and gathering in the world that takes place, and that has become the focal of millions of people every year. 63 million people visit Kaaba to do what? To live the tradition of Mother Hajra and to remind themselves and to relate themselves to that monotheistic tradition that was single-handedly built by her in the absence of her father, of her son, or her husband. Son in the sense he was infant and unable to play any role before he became mature. And the husband in the sense that he was away. And the father, she didn't have any father. So that is what I wanted to end the discussion on this part with. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم.
Thank you, Dr. Aslam, for sharing these verses with us. I'm reflecting this last verse that you just covered. Hajj is around the corner, and
Yes.
there may be no Hajj this year. But this brings us back to the time of Hajra al-Islam, that to recognize some of this history. The major aspects of Hajj are there to commemorate the struggle of Hajra. So that reminds us
Indeed.
of that. And then I'm so glad you covered this previous verse, which was 14:19. When I was reading this, I thought that some of the Hollywood screenwriters may have been inspired by this verse. When it's talking really about a new creation. There are several science fiction movies that have been made, that replace the human race with another race. And here the bikhalaqin is that in one of the previous verses, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he will replace the people. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying he'll replace the entire creation with another creation. So that is very
Indeed,
illuminating verse.
it's a very mind-boggling and very challenging verse of the Quran, because what it says is that some other creation that might be much more act in a much more responsible manner towards the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and which would use its intellect to the best of the ability. But one thing which we understand, that regardless of of our religious affiliation, human beings in general so far have focused a lot in terms of learning the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this understanding began much before, the 14th century. For the last 5,000 years, human beings have been making efforts to understand the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the exploration became much more common after the introduction of these Islamic thoughts in the 14th century, in the 7th century.
Right. So Some other verses I was hoping you could reflect on were, let's see. This was 13:3 and 13:4. So in one of our interfaith sessions last year, it was during Ramadan. Uh, there was a lady there, not a Muslim, but she was reading the Quran and she was talking about verses of the Quran that really inspire her are these verses that talk about the creation. And she was saying that in other scriptures that she reads, she doesn't find this beauty, of the creation the way the Quran talks about it. And here are two verses that talk about creation and ends with people who reflect and people who reason. So after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how he has created the creation, and he says that there truly are signs in this for people who reflect. And then in Surah in 13 ayah 4 says, we make some of these taste better than others. There truly are signs in this for people who reason. So people who reason and reflect.
In fact, if we look at these two verses, we find something very interesting. The first stage is the reflection or reasoning. Why is this happening? What is happening? And the second stage is rationalization. Means that empirical understanding of what is happening. So it is theory and practice. It's hypothesis and then empiricism. That when you look at the creation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, you must ask, why is this happening? What is happening? And then once you develop, you try to understand the laws behind what is happening. And when you develop those laws, then you say, can what is happening be used to enhance the human understanding of the universe and human understanding of God Almighty? So reason and rationalization, or reflection and rationalization, is the essence of faith. Without reflection and without reasoning and without rationalization, the faith remains incomplete. It is not a blind faith. I follow because my forefathers used to follow. No, you follow, you enhance your understanding based on what you discover. And that's why you would see in Surah Ra'd, emphasis is placed وَسَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Everything that has been created on earth and in the heavens and the space is for you to explore and to subdue. Subdue means that you learn those laws. And unfortunately, this is what we in general have ignored. By we, I mean the Muslims in general. Others have been focusing on those things, but we have ignored that kind of thing. So it's very powerful verse that the faith is founded on rationality and on reflection.
Right. So you could also probably say it's active belief and passive belief.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
That's
So
true.
active belief requires that we reflect and reason. And passive belief, as you said, it's just passively
Just
we believe because
keep on reading and
perpetu
reminding yourself. Yeah.
right, perpetuating. And of course our forefathers and scholars in the past, they did reflect and reason based on their times, and we need to learn from that, of course. But we
But
need to see
simultaneously,
how do we apply that today. Today, those things may have changed based on the information that we have, so it's an active participation in that process.
indeed, this is where we basically, you know, I don't have to go into details, but even in this country, when the internet first became common, there were scholars, Muslim scholars, who declared this internet as an eye of Satan that should not be touched by Muslims. And today, through this process of technology of internet, we are communicating with each other the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely. I remember when we first started Islamicity in 95, we would go to a lot of people and talk about the internet. And that's exactly some of the comments we got, that this is the Dajjal that, that we're
Indeed,
working with. So,
and what
people did
is
not
very funny,
comprehend.
that many of those scholars who call it Dajjal are now fond of using this technology, especially during this lockdown.
Well, I'm happy that that's a good sign that we can change our opinion about things
Indeed.
and adapt it also.
Yes.
So one more verse that I wanted to talk about was 14:3. Let me just bring that up. So here I wanted to kind of just see if you would reflect on this first part of the verse: those who prefer the life of this world over the life to come. In a lot of circles, uh, the emphasis on the life to come is overshadowing the life of this world based on understandings of verses like this, a overemphasis of verses like this, that our entire focus should be on the life to come. And the life to come cannot happen without life here.
Now, I'm glad that you brought this one, Arsh. And I've been reflecting on this particular verse also for quite some time, and I feel that there are two different uh, possible explanations. One is what is very apparent: those who love the life of this world over the life hereafter, means who are so much engrossed in this particular life that they forget everything about the life hereafter. And the second one is that who are content with what they have got and who are so much engrossed with the present that they ignore the future, whether in this life or in the life hereafter as well. In other words, uh, it is inviting people to look at their attitude and behavior and style of life in a dynamic manner so that they could keep on moving. That is one explanation. The second one is that they should not be so much engrossed in this life that they would ignore the real life that would come after this particular life. But what Quran is saying, that there has to be a balance. You cannot prefer one over the other. You cannot neglect one while focusing on the other. And this is this balance that the Quran is emphasizing. And the Quran is saying that the life hereafter depends on your life in this world. If you lead a balanced and good life, you would also get a balanced and good life in the life hereafter. So when some people say that we have nothing to do with what is happening in this world, then they are ignoring other verses of the Quran which says وَسَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا, that everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened and subdued for you in this universe is for you. We're ignoring that. Why then we do the research? Why then we do the reflections? Why then we do the rationalization? Why then we explore? we explored so that we could make things better and act in a responsible manner. And now let me conclude with that. There are three different types of people that we see throughout history. Those who are only concerned about this life, and they are negating the divine guidance in totality because they are not focusing on life after. The second category, those who only focus on the life hereafter, they are also negating the divine guidance by not living a balanced life. And the third one is those who are balanced in their attitude and understanding of the world in which they live and the world that they would live after they leave this particular world. They are the ones who are described in the Quran as mu'mineen. They are the ones who are described in the Quran as Muslimin. In behavioral terms, in action oriented terms, not in linguistic sense. So that is my understanding of the verse that you brought.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So with that ending, maybe I'll start with the dua, and then you can maybe complete the dua related to this verse. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. Give us the good in this life, and give us the good in the afterlife. So inshallah, thank you so much.
Indeed, this is the dua that the Quran has taught us. The Quran, this is the dua that the Quran has taught, and I would repeat the dua that we repeated. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the inspiration to lead a good life in this world and a good life in the life hereafter. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum,
Assalamu alaikum.
everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.